Do not use Samsung Messages. I repeat, do not use Samsung Messages.
Okay, I actually tried it out this time, or at least I tried to. So on that video, I got an overwhelming amount of people telling me to go and try Samsung Messages and that they don't like Google Messages. So I thought, okay, maybe it's getting revived. Let's go ahead and give it a try. I did a little research and I found out that Samsung Messages brought back RCS after getting rid of it early January of this year. But when trying to use RCS on Samsung Messages, I met a ton of nightmares. First of all, it did not work for me. RCS, even though I enabled it on Samsung Messages, was not working. And after doing some research, I realized that not all carriers are supporting RCS in Samsung Messages. And for that, I would say if it works for you, good, go ahead and use Samsung Messages. I was able to briefly see some of the features of Samsung Messages. One of the big selling points was categories, but to me, that wasn't a huge factor for using Samsung Messages. And for those of you who are on Google Messages, don't try using Samsung Messages because you'll probably switch back. And switching back from Samsung Messages broke my RCS in Google Messages, because you can only have RCS enabled on one of the two messaging platforms. When you set up Samsung Messages as your default messaging service, it disables the one in Google Messages. So then I uninstalled Samsung Messages and went back into Google Messages, and my RCS setup was stuck in verifying my phone number, which is fine. Okay, it'll go ahead and verify in a couple minutes, but it didn't. And when I looked it up, a lot of other people had this issue, and I had to run through a lot of loopholes just to get it to work again on Google Messages. Pretty much turning off RCS, removing my phone number from my Google account, re-verifying it, and kind of all these random steps to try and get it to be enabled again in Google Messages. So although I see the sentiment for Samsung Messages, I still stand by saying not to use Samsung Messages. It's not going to come pre-installed on your devices, and trying to use it might break Google Messages and might ruin RCS altogether. And Samsung actually announced that they're going to put Samsung Messages away. It is kind of interesting that they did re-enable RCS support on it. So if it works for you, that's good. Go ahead and keep using it, but just keep in mind that in the future it may cause issues for Google Messages and you may not get support for much longer. We don't have a timetable on that support just yet,